I'm Ben Silverio.
And I'm Rachel Granda-Gluski.
And I'm Ansel Burch.
And it's
time to party!
This month's episodes on Kate and Leopold were recorded on April 30th of 2023. We are not doctors. We don't give medical advice. Please drink responsibly.
That's not the name of the song, Ansel.
The jazzy remix titled Why Every Time, our new theme song for season 4.
You get right on producing that.
Yeah. It's in the public domain. I can do that.
Yeah. Party people, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in to Time to Party, where somehow we have time to act like idiots.
Yeah.
Every month.
We're
For your entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you like it.
We're adults.
We are, for some reason.
Legally.
Are we?
In most states.
In most states, yeah.
Yes. We are joined by an amazing guest this month. Ansel.
It's not me.
It's not you. But you know this guest very well.
You know who knows her even better? She does. Hey, Rachel, tell us about yourself.
My name's Rachel, and I'm here to talk about the movie we watched.
Nailed it. First try. See, I had every faith. And what movie was that, Ben?
Yes, this month we are talking about Kate and Leopold, the, I was going to call it seminal 2001 historical rom-com.
You like to go between seminal and classic, and I don't think this is either of those things.
That's why I was hesitant this time.
you, both of your adjectives, they're not...
They didn't work this time.
The definitely film.
This is a movie. Can confirm.
Yeah.
Fun fact, released on Christmas Day 2001.
Really?
Flex.
Yeah, right? God, remember when Miramax would just do mostly rom-coms and stuff?
I do.
Like they were the
their
jam.
Whole deal, yeah.
Serendipity.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everything with Meg Ryan.
Yeah, I was gonna
so
say
many.
they just bought Meg Ryan for a few years.
That was the last carryover from the old studio system.
They make all the Sandra
Meg
Bullock
Ryan
ones
came into
too.
the office. She was like, "I would really just love a 10-year contract. Could you still have those kicking around?" And they're like, "We got one."
This is the last one. You're in luck.
So that's how she did this.
We can only do 5-year contracts for Hugh Grant, so you'll have to see if you can convince him to come back.
If you don't know about Kate and Leopold, our good friends at Rotten Tomatoes will enlighten you. Kate McKay is a modern-day executive, a 21st century woman, driven to succeed in the corporate world. Leopold, the third Duke of Albany, is a charming gent and bachelor of the late 1800s. With career and social expectations looming, each has grown cynical about the very notion of falling in love. But when a rip in the fabric of time thrusts Leopold into the present-day New York, the potential for an old-fashioned modern romance ignites.
The fuck?
Who wrote this?
Someone who didn't get paid enough.
Yeah,
I mean,
And
that's
had possibly not watched the movie.
accurate.
they saw the trailer and they were like, "Yeah, I got this."
Yeah. First thing I'd like to say.
Yeah, he falls. He's not thrust.
Old-fashioned modern, very good turn of phrase.
First thing I'd like to point out that this movie was directed by James Mangold. You may recognize him as the director of The Wolverine.
Really?
Yes. So to me,
Wait, which Wolverine? The bad origin story, or
no, that's X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay.
The
Getting the
Wolverine.
Wolverines mixed up.
Yes. No, that was Gavin Hood, and he deserves every shame that comes with that. The Wolverine was the one in Japan.
Oh, okay.
Which was mildly better.
Yeah, it wasn't
I would go further than mildly. I thought it was
terrible.
enjoyable. Like, it wasn't a great movie, but there was a lot of good action, and Hugh Jackman is always good as Wolverine.
I would
but
say the same for X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like, if you just
No.
shut off your brain a little bit, like look at all those
call
explosions.
some shenanigans on that one.
He jumps out. What does he? Does he crash the helicopter with the motorbike in that one?
Yes, that wasn't Origins.
Yeah.
But speaking of, who else is in this movie? Liev Schreiber.
Exactly. I was just going to go there. Sabretooth and Wolverine are both in this movie. But also, Mangold did Logan. So,
that was
real
a
good one.
movie.
So he's a real auteur.
Exactly. Only when it comes to Hugh Jackman. Though.
Yeah.
His next movie, which I am very excited for, but a lot of people aren't, including
Next one now.
his current in the present day.
Current project.
Yes. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Oh.
I'm apprehensive about it.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
That's where I am about it. Warwick is very not into it.
He's been burned too many times.
That's his MO.
Yeah.
But James Mangold knows Hugh Jackman very well today. But back then, this was their first collaboration, I believe.
Very cool.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Yes, this was the first one, and then it was the Wolverine, Logan, Greatest Showman. So
Oh, he did
hate that
Great Showman as
movie.
well?
he did.
Wow.
My thing about the Greatest Showman, I love Pasek and Paul. I think the music's very good. If it wasn't about P.T. Barnum, it would have been way more effective.
Said
We
the same
are the
thing.
same person
Yep.
because I have the same complaint. I'm like, if you had made it about Joe Schmo circus guy,
Yep.
I would have not had any issues with it. My sole issues. Well, I have two issues. My one issue is that
Is one of your issues that you don't see Zephron's butt?
no. My one issue is that Barnum
Put
was
it
a
on the list.
horrible person, and
Yes.
they really just
Glorified
completely made everything up. And my second issue is that like several years pass in that movie, and his children don't age.
Yeah. No, that's true.
It really bothered me. I don't know why. I remember that so clearly, being like, why didn't his kids age? Like, they went to Europe and back. It's been like a few years. Why didn't his kids age?
Yeah, that's a good point. I did
It's
not
like
even
how it
realize
bothers
that.
me that the first season of Glee takes place in Ohio and doesn't have seasons. They add seasons in
Later,
the
yeah.
later seasons of the show. They put in like seasons
They
for
do.
the the weather.
Well, you
But
realize
in the first season,
you realize none of them
don't.
had ever been to Ohio, so they didn't really.
I mean, I don't blame them.
Yeah, no, don't go to Ohio. It's terrible. I will
Aren't
go
you
on the
from there?
record. Yeah, I mean, I grew up there. It's a very important distinction.
And
Why,
I,
oh, why,
I grew up
oh,
just
why,
north
oh.
of there,
Ohio.
and I've been born and bred to hate Ohio.
Yeah, it's very reasonable. Do you know the official rock song of Ohio?
Cleveland Rocks?
No, that would actually kind of make sense. It's "Hang On, Sloopy." That's
What?
a real song that
No,
exists.
I know that
Yeah,
song.
I know that song.
But that's the
That is
official
the
song
official-
of Ohio?
The official rock song of Ohio.
What's the official country song of Ohio?
You know, I don't think we have one, which is weird because you'd think.
I only know the like state tree and state bird of Michigan.
What are they?
The state bird is the robin.
Okay.
I actually don't remember
So
what
it's not
the
a
state
cardinal.
tree is. It might be the
So is it Dick Grayson or Tim Drake? Carrie Kelly? What?
what's the
What's the
Jason
Damian
Todd?
Wayne?
Damian Wayne, yeah.
Jason Todd?
Yes, Jason Todd.
There we go. My husband is obsessed with Red Hood, so I better know.
Yeah, so is Warwick.
Get divorced.
That's what did it. Not remembering Jason Todd on a podcast one time.
That he's not going to listen to.
But he's not gonna listen. No, he actually might.
He might, yeah.
The Glorious Human has started listening to the smutty books I read on audiobooks
Ooh.
to get notes from.
That's good. There we go.
Yeah, except I think he's just discovered some of the fucked up shit I read instead. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna read what she finds hot. What the fuck? So I started to have to tell him, like, oh no, some of these I don't read for that.
You gotta guide him
please,
toward.
please don't get ideas from that one.
And then somehow the labels are switched and the farce begins.
Yeah, there we go. Moo-ha-ha! Too many doors. So what'd you think about this movie?
I remember really liking this movie when I first saw it, probably in college. So that would have been probably watched this like 2006, 2007. So, a little while after it had been released. It aged
Sure.
not great.
Like a fine milk.
Maybe didn't wear enough sunscreen in its youth. Yeah. There were some choices made that definitely not just the technology,
Sure.
but definitely date it.
What was one of the most problematic things from
Other
the
than
movie?
JJ the walking HR nightmare, like that man kissed the back of her head at the office.
Yep. And if Leopold had his sword, it would have gone right through Bradley Whitford's head.
And that would have also been an HR nightmare.
Yes.
He doesn't work there. It's fine.
Yeah, no. Also, apparently, like, nobody in New York has screens on there. Nobody in movies ever has screens on their windows because bugs don't exist. They go in and out of each other's windows constantly.
Yeah, I don't think any of my friends have had screens in their windows, just bars.
What facility are you visiting at?
Brooklyn. No.
The great
Maybe
facility
it's just
known
not a New
as
York thing.
Brooklyn.
Because here in Chicago, I have screens on all of my
I mean, the hotel we stayed in when we were in New York, my one experience with Brooklyn windows for sure did not have screens.
Gasp! It must just be a New York thing.
Maybe.
As we constantly say on this podcast, New York sucks.
They're just like, there are already bugs in here, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, well,
bugs
you'll deal with
inside,
it.
there, bugs outside. Yeah, no, I definitely. JJ was just so quintessentially the man, like the boss man of the time period. He was such a trope. But I think the main reason that this movie didn't age well is it's another one of those. There was such a trend in like those 90s and like early 2000s movies where like you have these career women who are like very successful and good at their jobs, but somehow still miserable just because they don't have love in their lives. And
Like in Working Girl.
right.
How would you compare it to 13 Going on 30? Another movie we watched recently.
I'm going to tell you something really shocking.
You've never seen it?
I've never seen it.
Wow.
Okay. That's not that shocking.
I know I'm ruining my romance girl cred, but I've never seen that movie. I think because I found there was like when that movie came out, for some reason I found Jennifer Garner really annoying.
Really?
And at this point I'm afraid to go watch it because I'm worried it'll be one of those movies that like everyone has so much nostalgia for, but if I tried to watch it now I would just be like, what the fuck?
If the demographics from our podcast episode about it tell us anything, you're probably okay.
Okay, so it did age pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay,
actually,
all right,
I think for the most part it held up.
Yeah, there were some bits, but like
Nobody eats Razzles anymore.
that was, I mean, so
Oh man, I remember
so
those.
glaring.
It's a candy and a gum.
Uh-huh. I mean, you get to see the ruffles, so
It's true.
that's good.
Little baby Ruffles.
Mm-hmm. It's got like an art house feel to it in spots, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember why I never saw it at the time, but then it blew up and it became like one of those things that everyone was like, the hype was so strong that I was scared to watch it.
I'm picking up a pattern here.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to watch things like years after they come out. I don't know why. I'm not good at keeping up with like current media, which is why this show is great.
Boy, we've got some good news for you, yeah.
Taking it back to 2001 is just my speed.
So I would like to point out that the day that this movie starts was April 28th, 1876.
Okay.
I completely forgot about what day it was. So when did I do my research for this podcast?
2 days ago.
April 28th,
Well done.
2023. And I was just like, no fucking way.
Nice. That was such a weird year for them to pick, the 1876. They harp on that specific year so much. And it led to so many historical inaccuracies.
It did. But I think the one thing that they wanted was to make sure that the elevator wasn't like popularized by then. So that some things lined up. Of course, there were other things that didn't line up, But I wanted to go back to the very beginning of the movie where it just starts out with a series of dick jokes.
By a dude who was already dead.
The greatest erection on the planet. Just, I don't know. It was just so, I mean, juvenile is being nice, right?
Yeah. It was a weird choice to start a movie.
Right. Especially
That-
a rom-com,
Especially
right?
a rom-com, and especially a rom-com that is definitely geared towards like an older audience.
Yep.
Like this rom-com was definitely not designed for like college age 20-year-olds. Like it was, well, I mean it was, but it also like all of the characters in it are like
30-somethings.
yeah, 30s, 40s somethings. So it was definitely a weird choice for
Yes.
a movie that is otherwise fairly mature.
Yeah, I agree. And it was rapid fire. It kept going. that was a very long dick joke.
Yeah. Oh God.
Ansel, I made her
Well
laugh.
played.
You missed it.
I know. No, I heard it. Apparently,
Ashamed
not
of
much
myself.
happened in that year. Graham Bell got his patent for the telephone.
And Leopold does mention Bell's telephone in the movie.
The Royal Titles Act was passed.
Oh, I also wrote down in my notes that the screenplay was written by Steve Rogers. And I thought that was
So
amusing.
that's what Cap was doing when he wasn't saving the
There
world
we go.
anymore.
When he traveled back in time
Became
and
a
decided not to
script
help
writer.
with anything anymore. Yep, there we go.
So when I was reading about this movie, they were talking about some bits that were censored because there were references suggesting that Kate is Stuart's great-great-grandmother.
Oh,
Oh yeah, no, I did. I read about that too, where like Stuart is a descendant of Leopold, and that's why he's researching him and why he decides to go back in time to that era.
Yeah, Stuart is the great-great-grandson of Leopold, apparently. But I don't remember that being in the movie.
Yeah, no, they cut it out.
Like, so the bits that I read that were cut out were just the ones, like, more explicitly pointing out the connection. But I'm guessing there may have been a reference left in, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I didn't catch it. Apparently, there's a director's cut of this movie where some of it is included.
interesting.
But, like, why?
No, I feel like the focus group that was like, maybe not that, was ditched down the nose with it. Yeah, they were very ahead of their time. No Game of Thrones, incest wasn't cool yet.
Right.
So
Maybe the writer was like, "It's been so many generations. That's fine."
I mean, this is New York, not
course.
Kentucky,
West Virginia,
you know.
yeah.
Speaking of Steve Rogers, kissing
Okay,
people.
all right, hold on. Wait a minute.
Tying it back together.
That's only one generation.
They are, I think, related by marriage.
Yeah, that's
In
the thing.
defense. Still gross though,
It's not like
because he's gonna meet her as a kid,
Yep.
yeah,
and
he
she
is.
probably met him as a kid, and then sees him as an adult and is like, "You look like my great uncle." Hey.
Great uncle issues.
That's a new one.
That is a new one. But Sharon Carter has issues.
Yeah.
I mean, look where she is now.
Maybe that's why. That's the heel turn.
That's why the MCU Sharon Carter is so messed up because of
Well, because when she first met him, it wasn't weird. Then he went back in time. Now we're in an alternate timeline. Now it's
she
weird.
knows it's weird.
Does she know it's weird?
I think she knows it's weird. I feel like, didn't she make a comment in Falcon and the Winter Soldier about being weird? Isn't there some kind of...
She definitely gives him a look during the funeral in Civil War.
I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch this
Because
movie.
she's giving the eulogy at the funeral, and Sam is just like, and Steve looks up and he's like, "What?"
Yep.
All right. Something I wrote down was I found the whole when he's like fighting with his dad in the early scenes, and he's like, "The royalty is dead." I find that really funny. As we're about to crown a new king of England in like 2 days.
Oh, that was his uncle. Because
uncle.
his parents died.
Oh, okay.
Remember,
yeah.
they
So
were
that
in the
was
picture.
his uncle. Yeah. No, you're correct.
We're back to more uncle stuff.
Yeah, back to more uncle stuff. But yeah,
You can kill
he
uncles
tells
in a
his
movie.
uncle that the royalty is dead, and I was like, "Yeah, joke's on you. It's totes not."
We keep thinking it's not going to make it. But...
I was very impressed that they had the correct dresses for
Oh, yeah?
1876. Yeah.
What characteristics made them accurate?
Okay, so in the late 1870s, the natural form dress became popular. I'm going to bore the shit out of people with this. Basically, they were like, no more bustles. And these very, like, slim, fitted skirts with these very elaborate trains were very
They were
popular.
suddenly into butts.
Yeah, they were suddenly into butts, and like really like fitted, and they were hard to walk in. They're stupid style. I freaking hate them. They were only popular for like 4 years, and then they were like, nope, back to the bustle. We hate these. I can hide a chair under my skirt this way. This is better. And so they got rid of like that. They went out of fashion pretty quick, but everybody is wearing a correct natural form dress.
Interesting.
Which is normally, I think I was expecting a lot of these kind of older, like historical romances. You tend to get a lot of like kind of modern influence on the costumes. Either that, or you'll have the instances where they like raided a costume shop
Sure.
for pieces, and you have this weird like mishmash of eras. And so I was actually really impressed that like the consistency amongst the women's dresses was actually
How
really...
about Leopold's clothes? Were they accurate?
I mean, the soutache on his jacket was a little over the top, I think.
But that wasn't just because he was rich?
It might have been. I don't think the soutache was, even for royalty, like super popular at the time. I think he would have just been wearing a typical like dinner jacket. I don't think he would have been wearing like a full military-esque tails coat.
What about the...
But I think they wanted to drill that home for the modern stuff, so they took a little liberty with him.
What about the butter commercial costume?
That was actually probably more historically accurate.
Really? Interesting.
Honestly, in terms of the suit he was wearing, because it was a little less like gaudy and over the top.
Well, also, he was dressed for a ball when he goes through.
Have worn,
That's
they still would
not
have
the
worn
formal-
suits. Yeah, like what he's wearing was a little bit more like early, maybe like early 1810s, 1820s at the earliest, because you really get by the 1870s, men are wearing suits that are very, very similar to what you're wearing now. The man's suit has really not changed that much in like the last 150 years.
We're just playing with lapels now.
Yeah, once you got out of like the Regency era, very high-waisted trouser and like short waistcoats, pretty much the suit hasn't changed. And he's wearing almost a more like 1820s style pants, and not his tie, but his waistcoat and everything. And
You
so
the
the jacket's a little over the top.
You know what male fashion trend that I hate? Which is obvious if I know this is an audio medium, but if any listeners have ever seen me, I hate the slim fit bullshit.
Oh, yeah. It's not for us. Yeah.
Right? Like,
No.
what is the point?
But men's Regency clothes, those high-waisted trousers look good on everyone.
It's true. It's true.
You
How
wanna
many of
look-
those do you own, Ansel?
Like 8.
They just make you look real. They do a lot for like lengthening the whole line of your body, so you look taller, you look slimmer, you look very like lean.
Interesting.
They do a good optical illusion. Men's, I don't know why they went to suits, and especially not the fucking 20 zoot suit disaster. You don't need to talk about this, but like
Zoot suit riot.
good music, bad fashion.
You know that was a real thing that happened?
I know it was
really
a real
quite
thing.
a tragedy.
Yeah, no, weird thing to write a song about. That was kind of horrible.
It's really fucked up. Cherry Poppin' Daddy.
Well,
But isn't the song
they are-
talking about the tragedy? Like, it's just a catchy song that shouldn't have as upbeat of a...
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, I need a down-tempo rendition of Zoot Suit Riot, the, like dirgy.
Have you heard the up-tempo version of the Empire theme from Star Wars?
I mean,
Have
I've
you
heard a
heard
few, yeah.
The Imperial March done in a major key.
Oh, I have heard
It's
that.
so good.
It's amazing.
I've also heard it done in a major key on Rubber Duckies, which, or not Rubber Duckies, Rubber Chickens. Squeaky Rubber Chickens.
Amazing.
It is hilarious.
That was on the short list of weird songs to walk down the aisle to for our wedding. Was the Imperial March in a major key.
I remember.
Ooh.
How did it get vetoed?
Because Kate really wanted to send y'all down to Rainbow Road, and not until we got to the aisle did we realize that there's no tempo to Rainbow Road. We just sent y'all on your way.
Yep. Good luck!
Watching them try to pace themselves down the aisle at my wedding to Rainbow Road, which has absolutely no like distinct tempo beat, was so funny.
Rainbow Road as in...
The Mario Kart.
The
Okay, so it is
Kart
what I thought.
Rainbow Road. We did an orchestral version of it, but there's still really no like
Sure.
downbeat tempo
Yes.
to that music. And watching them all try to like pace their way down the aisle when they didn't have any type of beat to go off of.
When you said Rainbow Road, like, it started playing in my head, and I'm just like, no, they're not
yeah.
talking about that
That's surely
song.
not
so
that.
for my wedding, we used all like video game music. I walked down the aisle
Oh.
to the Turret Opera from Portal 2.
Cool.
We walked out to the Giles theme from Chrono Trigger, I think.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we had a lot of video game music.
Oh, that's fun.
Ended up being our theme. So
That's really cool.
yeah, that's what we did. But anyway,
I'd like to talk about the romantic aspect of this historical romantic comedy. Leopold tells Charlie, Kate's brother, at one point, no one wants to be romanced by a buffoon.
I love that.
And I'm just like, I like that quote, and it's good advice, but then I'm just like, oh, is that what I'm doing wrong?
As someone married to a buffoon.
Absolute buffoon.
An absolute
Unrepentant buffoon.
He was not even going to be mad for calling me.
No.
that. No, he would agree. I would slightly disagree, but I kind of get it.
It's an interesting take for a Miramax movie, I'll say that.
Yeah.
It is an interesting take for a Miramax movie. One thing I found interesting about the romance in this movie, though, is I feel like they kind of didn't like. Leopold comes from the past, but they used a very modern idea of what like historical romance was on him that didn't really suit his character at all when you thought about it. Like, the things we know about him are that he was raised in the aristocracy and he is an inventor. Yet he apparently also had the free time to like be sitting around and reading Byron and learning how to cook. So like he still has it's a very modern idea of what a dream man is. The guy who's thoughtful and eloquent and buys you flowers and cooks you dinner and kind of that reverse, kind of the house husband thing, but isn't actually realistic for a man from that time period to behave like that. And I found that to be pretty interesting because the type of man he was actually an incredibly modern concept.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What advice do you think Leopold would have given Charlie if this was historically accurate?
I mean, I think for someone in Leopold's position, he would have, even though he hated it, he would have agreed with his uncle that marriage isn't about love, it's about duty, it's about finding, at best, someone you get along with and can have a lasting, at least, I don't think he'd ever consider it friendship, but like a good rapport with someone who you get along with and maybe have similar interests in. But like the whole idea of courting, and even in his specific scenario where he's basically been told, we're going to throw you into this room of women, you're not even allowed to court them, you just need to pick one.
Right.
Without really having any opportunity to get to know them at all, is really in contrast with like the overall message of the movie, where he does come across as this very like sweet, thoughtful, romantic, grand gestures, waits on her, dotes on her. It's like, where is that coming from? It almost would have made more sense if he like didn't want to be an inventor. He wanted to be a poet. But then how could you make it such a big deal that he had to go back in time if he didn't invent something as vital as the elevator, which he didn't do. But yeah.
It's a little bit more Wildian in his approach. The like, treat every woman as if you loved her sort of.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he should have gone back to his time with his ideas of courting and love, as opposed to showing up in the future already with these ideas.
Yeah, I feel like he would have learned those things. Oh, I can have... It would almost kind of seem more interesting if, like, maybe instead of being a buffoonish, out-of-work actor, if Charlie had been, like, the romantic poet who teaches Leopold a little bit about how to, like, romance women and what a modern woman wants, and then Leopold took that back, but then it wouldn't have, necessarily have made as much sense when Kate follows him.
But speaking of like not really making sense, the time travel mechanism of this movie. First,
I mean, it's no, go ahead.
The science is just insanity, to the point where I couldn't even follow it enough to like research if any of it was even a real theory.
Yeah, like
it was so bananas.
Isn't it technically a time loop then?
I mean, he doesn't repeat it, does he?
Well, Stuart has to go back in order for Kate to go
It's a causal paradox.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a causal loop.
What I want
guess
to
you
know
could
is
call it.
why
There we
did
go.
that time slip, no matter when they went through it, always take them to the same day?
Yes.
That
What
was kind
in
of a
the
weird-
algorithm made it
why
that
was it
day?
this hole always leads to this place?
I mean, that's how Time Bandits works. Kinda. Theory.
It always goes back to the
But it
same
was
day?
also
Well, that's what they were saying. Was like,
somehow-
there's a time door over here. They got to go through that time door.
But it was
Oh, that's a good point. But Time Bandits does a better job of explaining it, I think. And because Stewart, who should have been the one explaining it,
yeah.
didn't do a great job, it kind of took me out of it. But also, Sabretooth sucks. So...
But one of the other things that bugged me was he was like, you're going to go back a little bit before you left. Wouldn't he
Right.
then run
You'll
into
repeat.
himself? Like, so wouldn't
Yes.
he have to run out chasing him, and then the other one walks back in? Oh, sorry, I was hiding up the stairs. Like,
Classic Back to the Future 2.
yeah.
Marty has to avoid himself playing
Yeah,
Johnny
they
Be Good.
completely ignore that aspect of it. He just goes back early, but is still himself.
Yeah.
Which I found kind of...
If he had to go through that conversation with his uncle again, he would have had to take out himself in order to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then if he took out himself, then that version of himself doesn't go to the future. And then
Yeah, exactly. And then, because even Stewart is like, you might see me. Don't chase me this time. I'm like, no, he should have been like, okay, you're going to show up early. You're going to have to hide from yourself.
you're going to see yourself chase me.
Yeah, you're going to see yourself chase me, and then you need to get back in there.
We've seen Days of Future Past. He's clearly just slipped back into his own body as it was at that time. There's not another version of him. It's just he just reappears in the body that he had at that moment. It's just Wolverine. That's my thesis.
I mean, that does...
No, but for real, yeah, I bet
That
that's
does
how
make
they're
it make more
justifying
sense.
Yeah, that does make it make more sense.
You are going to bop right back into your own body as it was
With
in that
this
moment.
But also...
knowledge. But then how...
like
But
Calvin
this
of
also
Reseda.
goes back to Stewart not explaining things very well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Which also probably explains why he was in the hospital for way longer than he should have been, because he wasn't explaining things properly, except to Gretchen, the nurse.
Yeah.
Who may or may not have been a
wonderful,
patient.
kind soul, Gretchen.
Shout out to Kristen Shaw for being Miss Tree of Schenectady.
This was her first role ever. She does not age.
No, she
No.
doesn't. She looks exactly the same.
She looks exactly the same. I want to know what that girl's moisturizer routine is. Like, please tell me about your skincare. You look fantastic. She was like young in this
yes.
too, and she has aged like very well.
Another quote that I wrote down was, "I'm tired and I need a rest. If I need to peddle a little pond scum to get one, then so be it."
She is a slave to capitalism. I love when she called him out. I
Yes.
thought that was... But then it made me angrier than when she goes with him in the end. Because I was like, ma'am, we had this conversation.
Yeah.
I really...
talked about
Yeah,
this.
no, I hate that trope of like, oh, if only I had a romance. She gives up so much to go be with him.
But a lot of the movies back then had that. Do
Yeah.
you hate, or I guess, do you dislike those other movies as much? Or did this just seem out of character for Kate after what she went through?
I do think it's definitely a trope I don't love. I don't love the whole, like, I've worked really hard for this career and then I'm basically, like, gonna throw it all away because I met a guy. I don't love that trope, but it also seemed really like Kate works so hard and does, to an extent, seem to enjoy her job. And
Yep.
she's very competent at us. I don't think, other than like missing Stuart and being lonely, I don't feel like they set up enough reason for why she was unhappy. They were just like, oh, she just doesn't have romance in her life. And it would have been nice if maybe they gave us some more things, like maybe they provided additional context of like, oh, well, all of her girlfriends are like married and having kids and she never talks to them anymore.
Her assistant,
Her
even,
assistant, because her assistant was also kind of a love Lauren reading her romance novels
Yes.
and On the Clock.
Another
I'm sure I
actress
could do
who's
that.
gone on to,
Yeah,
to
gone
do
on
big
great
things.
And I must think it would have made more sense then if her brother was like less of a failure. Like if her brother was also really successful and less of a buffoon, it would have made more sense for like...
But then we wouldn't have gotten Breckin Meyer. We probably would have gotten Jeremy or Jason London. Who were in all of those fucking movies back then.
God. Yeah, no, he was a nice kind of flashbacky treat. But yeah, no, I wish they had set up more about like why she wasn't happy other than being lonely.
Yep.
And the fact that it seemed like she had no social life outside of work. Like
Yeah.
they really, but I think they needed to try harder to really, because she was so excited at first when she got that promotion. She'd been working so hard at it. And like, if you're really that miserable in a job, then why not bother like climbing the corporate ladder? Like, I think it would have made more sense almost if she had just been kind of like trapped in a
Coasting.
mediocre position that she didn't feel fulfilled in, as opposed to like deeply excelling at something that
Yeah.
she was very good at.
Leopold even pointed out at one point where he was just like, if you don't like your job, then don't do it. Because he didn't want to endorse
Yeah.
this thing that he didn't believe in.
And it could have been a very good time for her to be like, yeah, the more I think about it, the more I realize how unhappy I am peddling my pond scum. But she never says that.
Yeah. She's a very different character than we see in the end. And she doesn't really earn that change.
Yeah. She suddenly becomes a romantic who is willing to jump back in time with really no knowledge of what she's getting into.
Right.
Blindly, based off a guy that she pretty much just met, who, yes, swept her off her feet, and that's fun and all, but like,
Saved her with a horse.
yeah, got her bag back.
Another example of the woman giving up incredible things for a man who doesn't deserve it.
Like penicillin.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely one thing she should have
Basic
definitely...
medical care. She's probably
she
going to
should
die
have
in
taken that into
childbirth now.
Yeah.
But yeah, another example of that trope in action was Boy Meets World, where Topanga could have gone to Yale, but then decided to go to college with Corey so they could be together. And don't get me wrong, I love Boy Meets World, but
That was the wrong call. Yeah.
Yeah.
that was totally the wrong call. And the actors now will even say, like, no, she should have gone to Yale. If they were really meant to be, then they would have survived that. Like, long distance relationships now are much easier than they were back then. And by back then, I mean, Kate and Leopold times.
Which time though?
When the movie came out, not when Leopold was.
Oh, okay.
Back in 2001, it was very no, but just like in general, like now, in the modern era, it's easier because like you can call someone, or in the
Text
present
all
day, you
day.
can text or FaceTime or whatever. But even for Corey and Topanga, like Yale isn't that far from Philadelphia.
No.
Like they could have made it work, especially after Corey learned how to drive.
Yeah.
You know, so
I
like
mean, I think there's probably been a train from
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
yeah, there's probably a train too.
Might have had to change over in New York, but yeah, there's definitely public transit
Yes.
that could get you there.
Very easy to figure out. But like, of course, Topanga was going to succeed no matter where she went to school. She ended up becoming a successful lawyer anyway, as we saw in Girl Meets World. But it might have been better for her if she actually got to follow her
more
dream of
successful
going to
lawyer,
Yale.
yeah.
You know, she gave up her dream of going to this Ivy League school for. I mean, Corey is fine.
So when
Tell us how you-
Topanga time travels back to
Be with Leopold.
I'm just saying that Topanga and Kate might be kindred spirits here.
Yeah.
You
All
know?
right, I buy that.
I agree.
All right, any closing thoughts about the plot of this movie?
I'm gonna read through my notes.
Similar to I don't know why this is the first example that came to my head, but similar to Jurassic World.
Okay.
When you think about it, it starts to fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You after watching it the first time, you get that initial enjoyment of what you're looking for, but like the rewatch value isn't necessarily there.
Yeah. You can't. This does not stand up to scrutiny even a little.
Oh, I did want to bring up two things
Okay.
in my notes we didn't talk about. One, I wanted to mention that flushable toilets totally already existed and had existed for a very long time, and so the fact that he's shocked by it, that was one of the historical
They
inaccuracies.
wouldn't have flushed like that.
They still would have flushed, though.
They would have flushed. Yeah.
He would have been looking up here for a pulley.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it still would have flushed.
Yes.
Like it would have looked exactly like that toilet, to an extent.
That's fair,
It would
yeah.
have- The
Yeah, yeah.
design has not changed all that much.
They
But
just
something I wanted to
moved
talk
the-
about
yeah.
was one of the weird things about this, for all the weird historical inaccuracies, one of the things they did get 100% right was the male British aristocracy marrying rich American women was
yeah.
100% a thing.
All the rage. Yeah.
All the rage, because it was the case that so many of these aristocracies, their like family homes were crumbling. They had no money left. All they had was a title. And they were not bringing in enough income anymore to support their lifestyles. And so it was a very big thing. And these new money rich Americans loved the idea of marrying their daughters off into gentry. And so something that I do think is funny about this movie is how, like, what happens to them because he's not marrying rich. They're
Yeah.
gonna lose all their stuff. Like,
Oh yeah. His uncle's pissed.
yeah, his uncle's so mad.
Meanwhile, Otis is standing in the back like, yeah, you go, girl.
They also never would have kissed in public like that. That would have been so scandalous.
Oh, yeah?
Those late girls would have been fainting on the floor.
The talk of the village.
I say.
Yeah, no, that would have been scandalous. He also would have, like, passed out at her in pants, because he makes a reference when he sees her in pants. He, like, makes a reference about it, and I was like, nope, women in pants didn't become a thing until the bicycle. You're too early, dude. That's later.
Wait, wasn't he just saying what Charlie told him about her wearing pants? Because, like, it's like Charlie warned him that she wears pants.
He did, but he still makes a connotation to her being like a working girl, so she wears pants. But like even working women in 1870s would not have worn pants. Pants did not become a thing for women until the bicycle popularized them, because skirts were getting sucked up into bike chains, and so the knickerbocker became a thing. But yeah, even at most you might wear like a split skirt, which were basically wide-legged pants that looked like a skirt because they were so voluminous. Palazzo pants.
Sequin pants.
Yeah. But yeah, women really didn't wear trousers, and like there were women who wore pants who were arrested for it, like a little earlier in history than the 1870s. But there was like a famous woman who was like, I hate lady clothes, I want to wear pants all the time, and then got arrested multiple times for it.
Oh.
Yeah. But she was aristocracy, so they just like fined her and sent her on her way, and she paid the fines. But yeah, she was pretty hilarious.
Do you remember her name?
No, because there were a few people like that, and there's always a big discussion about whether or not they're like would they be considered queer or not, and that kind of thing, and it gets into very complicated subject matter. But I just remember that it was like a French lady who was like, no, skirts are stupid. Pants. She'd go around dressed as a dude because the clothes are more comfortable, and then they would be like, no, 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 and she would be like, you can't stop me. And basically that was like her whole shtick.
Ah, the French.
Gentleman Jack, doesn't she wear trousers as well?
Yeah, and she got arrested several times.
She got arrested for it, yeah.
No, she didn't necessarily wear trousers all the time. She was just very kind of masculine, and she like ran her family's company, and people didn't like it. She's fascinating though. Yeah,
Emma
actually
Snodgrass
super
looks
gay.
like she might be a person who...
Yeah, I mean there were multiple
Anyway, yeah.
women at various points who got in trouble, but yeah, one of the things is they would like fine you. But typically they were all fairly well off women who would just like pay the fine and keep on keeping on in their pants. But it wasn't like a common thing until the late 1880s.
Okay. So, last question. Is Kate and Leopold worth your time?
I think the main issue with it is, like I said, when I originally watched it back closer to when it came out, I thought it was really cute. But I think viewed with a modern lens, it just doesn't really hold up that well, and it does kind of come across as kind of shallow. Just in terms of like there isn't really a lot of depth to it. Parts of it are really great. Like I definitely think that honestly the whole relationship between Charlie and Leopold was one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. But I just don't. I think there's a lot of better rom-coms out there now.
Yep.
That I can't ever see myself being like, you know what movie you really need to see? Kate and Leopold.
There were even better movies back then.
Yeah,
For
like...
Oh, yeah.
Serendipity. I love Serendipity, by the way. That's just...
I mean...
I don't know why that was the
terms
first
of
one that
Meg
came.
Sleepless in
Ryan
Seattle.
movies, if I'm going to make you
Oh,
watch
yeah.
a Meg Ryan movie, I'm going to make you watch When Harry Met Sally, which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I mean, yes. You've
Even
got mail.
though they
got
drive
mail.
the wrong way down Lakeshore Drive in that movie.
They do?
So in the beginning of When Harry Met Sally, they are leaving the University of Chicago.
Yes.
Which, if you live in Chicago, you know is on the south side of Chicago.
Yes.
Then, as they are leaving Chicago, they are driving south down Lakeshore Drive towards the Drake Hotel, which is way north of the University of Chicago, which makes me think that somebody at some point confused Northwestern and the University of Chicago.
Probably. That
in
makes
their
sense.
brains.
Oh, wow.
Because you would pass that if you were driving from Northwestern, but you would not pass the Drake Hotel if you were driving. But it is a beautiful shot. The Drake Hotel is stunning.
Yeah,
But-
I'm sure some cinematographer was like, no, we're doing
But
this.
that's like my Lord of the Rings, Aragorn kicks the helmet moment. Whenever I watch that movie with someone, I'm like, they wouldn't be driving past that because they're trying to leave and they're that's north of where they were.
He broke his toe when he kicked the helmet.
You know, that's real. He broke his toe.
The Drake Hotel is north of the University of Chicago. They wouldn't be driving past it in that direction.
So I'm trying to think of like Chicago movies to watch before I move, and like some of the ones I have on my list already are On the Line, High Fidelity. I've already rewatched the Blues Brothers movies, The Untouchables, but like I completely forgot that When Harry Met Sally starts
out
in Chicago.
It's they don't stay in Chicago very
They
long.
don't.
But it does start in Chicago.
Should that count?
I think it does. They begin their journey in Chicago.
That's true.
And then they go to New York.
Ugh, what a terrible progression.
Right.
God, you gotta move away from New York as far as possible.
Before I moved to Chicago, I've lived in college towns my whole life. And so I actually was like, I want to live in a big city. And so I
Sure.
kind of thought about the 3 big cities, New York, Chicago, and LA. And New York was immediately hacked off the list
Good,
because
as it should be.
I have visited New York twice, and whatever siren song people supposedly hear about New York,
Yep.
I do not experience. So I was uninterested.
As someone who was born and raised in Philadelphia, I learned early about the downfalls of New York. But also, whenever I visited, I just did
Yeah.
not feel like it was a place that I wanted to be.
Too congested.
Absolutely. It almost feels like you're enclosed. You know, it's so cramped. You know, it's I feel like I disparage New York every episode of this podcast.
Yeah.
Here for it. We've hit on Ohio. We've hit on New York. We're doing great. Yeah, no, I felt the same way. That's one of the things I love about Chicago is you can have that like downtown built up feeling, and then you go 20 minutes on the train, and it's completely different.
Stephen Colbert said that Chicago has everything New York has, but just less of it. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
And then LA just seemed too
Is
far
the
away.
best. I know. I love it.
Yeah, no, LA was definitely a contender. I think I just knew more people in Chicago.
Sure, that makes
and
sense.
I was like, it's not that far. It's because I was living in Madison, Wisconsin at the time. I knew a lot of people here. I had a support system already. I only knew like 3 people who lived in LA. But what's hilarious is now I know a ton of people who live out in LA.
So you and Aunt are moving soon.
Oh no! If I tried to, my mother-in-law got mad enough when I took him to another state, the one next door. If I tried to move him across the country, I'm pretty sure she would never forgive me.
Well, if you decide you want to go to Disneyland, hit me up.
There you
'Cause
go.
I'm always down for a Disney trip.
Yes, I love.
Hell
Disney.
yeah.
I'm usually out in. My grandma lives out in California.
Oh, what part?
So Newport Beach.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yes. Also horrible.
Also horrible,
One
but,
of the
you know.
houses across from where she lives fell into the bay.
Yeah, that makes sense. That'll happen. I mean, look what the Bluths did to Newport Beach. So
Yeah, she lives in Newport Beach, and we typically go visit her at Christmas. So I'm usually always in California. at
Christmas is the best time to go.
Yes.
I cannot wait to do Disneyland at Christmas. It's been too long since I've done it. Usually I would do Thanksgiving because that's when the Haunted Mansion would already convert over to Nightmare Before Christmas because of Halloween.
Yep.
But then all the Christmas decorations go up around the rest of the park. So I love it. I honestly could talk about Disney parks
Yes.
for fucking ever.
That's a different podcast.
That's a whole different podcast. Coming soon to the Indecisionist Podcast Network.
Hey, I'll do it. Before we get off of movies that feature Chicago, I do want to give you one tiny fun fact from
Okay.
when I worked at the Museum of Science and Industry. There's a Keanu Reeves movie called Chain Reaction, in which he runs into... There's a big chase scene, and he runs around the hall of airplanes in the Museum of Science and Industry. He goes through a door, and he comes out in a different part of the field museum so they can run past the dinosaurs.
Nice.
So if you want to watch that before you leave,
I'm trying to think of other movies that take place in
there's so
Chicago.
many.
But at this point,
Wanted.
I read too many books that take place in Chicago, and I'm starting to forget.
That'll happen, book talker.
Oh, I just read a book that took place in Chicago. It wasn't good.
Oh, that's too bad. Let's take
Was
this
it-
one home.
Was it Divergent?
I hate those fucking books.
The movies aren't much better.
We have
No,
a
they're
friend who
not.
was in those.
We have several friends
Yeah.
who are in
you
That's
friends
true,
with
several.
Shailene
My
Woodley?
ex-boyfriend.
No, they were all.
Those movies.
Which one?
Lucky.
Oh yeah, bunch of stunt
You
people.
dated someone named Lucky?
What was his nickname?
Oh. Sounds like a puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Fair.
All right. Well, you can find us on the internet. I'm at Silverio20 on Instagram, Twitter, and Hive.
I'm Rachel Granda-Gluski, and I am Orion Has Moxie on Instagram and A Wandering Reed on TikTok.
I am at Indecisionist on Twitter and at The Indecisionist on Instagram.
Special thanks to April Moralba for our podcast art and to Marlon Longett of Marlon and the Shakes for our amazing theme song. This has been an Indecisionist production. Head on over to indecisionist.com/time2party to check out all of our show notes and transcripts of episodes.
You can use the hashtag time2party to join in on the conversation. That's time2party.
As well as hashtag time2party, all one word. Spelled out. Thank you, Warwick.
Yes, well, we hope you enjoyed our little review of Kate and Leopold. It was a movie.
Yep.
Be sure to join us next week when we present you with some edutainment. Because knowledge is power.
Power corrupts.
Oh.
So learn. Go evil.
This is our villain origin story.
Oh, this podcast is our villain origin story?
Yep.
That's why we're documenting.
Got it. Yes. So while we consider costumes for our evil personalities, I want to remind you to be excellent to each other.
And party on, dude. Wow.